Eloro Resources here. It's June 7th, 2022. In this video, I'll just cover a few news releases that's come out lately. First one being the massive news release from Lion One Metals, ticker LIO.V. The company released one of the absolutely best drill holes I have ever seen. 20.86 grams per ton over 75.9 meters. I had to, check my eyes a few times that I read that correctly. I was actually in the middle of a call with another company when someone sent me the title of the news release, and it was a bit hard actually to focus on the call because Jesus Christ. This is pretty much what Quinton has been talking about. There should be a high grade feeder zone, which would pretty much be the main prize at depth, where you have all these veins that have been drilling at surface, because there's a bunch of veins at DYODD, but where they come together, obviously it appears that some obscene results can be seen there. And when you look at actual intercept, not only do you have the 20.86 grams per ton over 75.9 meters, it also states, in addition to the impressive intercept discussed above, hole TUG 141 encountered numerous other significant mineralized intercepts both above and below this interval, including. So you have this fat high grade intercept, and you also have this. Above this intercept, you had all these results. I don't remember seeing a hole. Obviously this is crazy enough. This is one of the most absurd drill holes I've ever seen, but it just, keeps on going, let's say. Which is typical of this system, alkaline gold system. You have very high grade but narrow veins. So okay, almost 4 grams per ton over 5.7 meters, includes 12 over 0.3 meters. And that has been the main criticism, I think, of of the DYODD deposit, that it's, narrow veins. But what apparently many seem to forget or want to ignore is the fact that the mine right next to DYODD, which is the Vatukula mine in Fiji, that's been, let's see if I don't know if they have an actual more pictures of it. No, okay, they don't seem to have. But that's also a mine. I think it's actually called the Emperor Mine, or Emperor Metals, I think, used to be the owner. One second. Yeah, anyway, Vatukula is also on Fiji, and that has been mined for, I think, over 70 years. And if you read the description, you can Google this. It states that, many or most of the veins are, centimeters to a few decimeters. So when people say that, hey, this is, narrow vein stuff, yes, it is. But the grades are obscene, and that's just how these alkaline systems are. And not every system is the same, obviously, but in this case, that's what they are. And the nearby Vatukula mine, which is, I think, at least 7 million ounces, also have these very narrow veins, and that has been mined for over 70 years. So it's, in my opinion, pure bullshit that, again, people just say, it's the very high grade to bonanza grade veins are narrow, and therefore, this is nothing to pay attention to. Again, if you bulk mine this, even though yes, there's a bunch of higher grade intercept as usual. It's, quote, nuggety. But still, if you would mine the whole thing, the average would be 20 grams per ton over 76 meters. So I mean, you could obviously handle a lot of dilution in that case. It's again, it's just simply a massive, massive, mind-blowing intercept. Best one I think I have ever seen, at least in a holding of mine. I mean, you would be most juniors would be happy to have like 20 grams over 3 to 4 meters. That would be, good enough. That's almost 100 grams gram per ton meter hole. When you combine in aggregate all mineralized intercepts reported in this hole, total 1,909 gram per ton meters. 100 gram meters is considered very good, very, very good. It's 1,900. And also, as you can read here, at the time of writing, hole, TUG 141 is still being drilled and is currently over 600 meter in depth with other mineralized structures yet to be assayed. And keep in mind, this is basically drilled. Here's the Tuvalu decline, and here's the TUG 141 intercept. So it's pretty much directly below the current resource on a permitted mining site, which is being developed. So you can imagine how much that jacks up the net present value, because, I mean, if you would do a cash flow calculation and it would be, I don't know, 5 to 10 years from possibly being mined or even, being developed, that hampers the net present value a lot. But to have this kind of intercept this close to, current infrastructure, let's say, below the deposit that is already scheduled to be mined at these grades, the value of these ounces are way higher than if you would have drilled this in any other part of the world. I mean, I think that's one thing that most people might not consider. And we know there's absolute giants, alkaline giants in the neighborhood along, this trend here. I don't remember exactly what the ounces are. I think here is, let's see if they have that. Here you can actually see Vatukoula, other deposit, and here's Tuvalu. I think, where did they used to have a slide at least, maybe it's still in, but where they show the endowment of these. I think here is like 25 million ounces and Porgera is 45 million ounces, or actually maybe that might be the other way around. I was pretty sure they actually had a yeah, anyway, absolutely obscene drill results. And of course, I mean, the whole here you can see Lihir is 40 million ounces, Porgera is 25 million ounces, Vatukoula was actually 11.5 million ounces, and that's just a few kilometers from Tuvalu and has been mined for over 70 years. And this, I think this is Tuvalu, or maybe this this is the mining lease, and here's Tuvalu. And you have, a 7 kilometer in diameter caldera left to explore. With you see high grade rock chip samples all over the place, and they don't have the geophysics here, but there's potassium alteration all over the place, Bleg samples lighting up everywhere. So it's like, this is still just a postage stamp of the actual caldera, and they're finding this stuff, and it's just so funny. I mean, I think the Line 1 news and the reaction, the initial reaction to the news is a perfect example of why you should love these sentiment lows. The stock opened up, I think, plus 14% on the best on the back of the best hole that's ever been drilled in the junior space for the last, who knows, years or decades, let's say. That's just incredible. I mean, imagine if you're short Line 1 and you see them put out one of the best holes that's ever been drilled in the last, again, like years or decades in the entire junior space. and you're only down 14% of paper. I mean, that's almost like, I wouldn't say, a miracle, but it's like nobody could foresee such a drill hole. So does that make sense that the revaluation takes it up 14%? I mean, in my book, of course not. That was a revaluation of like, I don't know exactly, but let's say 20, 25 million for this kind of result. I mean, this, I think, immediately puts line one in the crosshairs of being acquired. We've already heard that majors have been kicking tires on line one, and what do you think they're gonna think when they see this kind of result? Pretty much every major has a flagship alkaline gold mine, and along comes line one and puts out a hit like this. I mean, this, I think almost every major which has read the news release by now is probably taking a close look on line one. And in my opinion, it's dirt cheap, and that's why I think it's just ridiculous that it opened up 14%. And I know some people, including myself, I used to hate chasing something, but that's one thing I think has been let's say, a psychological error. I think it's more than okay to chase something that's up, say, 14-20% when it should be up 80%. That's not chasing to me, that's still stealing value. So I started buying immediately, and I've been buying quite a bit today across many portfolios which I manage as well. And in my opinion, the risk reward and the case for line one changed dramatically just from this last news release, and that's not a 14% case change which Mr. Market suggested right at the opening. No, I think this is a total game changer. Line one has turned from I think it started up as a top 20 position. I haven't actually been buying shares that much for the last months, I would say, many months. And all of a sudden I see this. I jacked up my position considerably right away. Same for many portfolios I manage. And one thing I would like to, I guess, press on is the fact that, like you've seen in Great Bear and any other great exploration story, the big returns doesn't come from the discovery hole. And I mean, okay, this is not a pure discovery hole, but this is a game changer hole because they discovered, let's say, a zone, a feeder zone, which appears to be obscene. So one could say that it's a discovery within a discovery. And the big returns are not made from the discovery hole. It's typically made over months and years from the holes that follow the discovery hole. So in my opinion, the journey for line one, I mean, it's already been well underway, but now it's been jacked up. The growth trajectory has been jacked up, in my opinion. It's all of a sudden jumped to a stock I would consider, a case I would consider a top 5, or at least top 10. That I'm aware of. Yeah, probably actually top 5. Just on the back of this one news release. And again, the big money is not made. Yes, it's nice to see the stock up yesterday, and it actually, I immediately started buying more today, and then I think it's been up to plus 22% or something. That's all and good to see a result like that on paper, but again, I'm actually expecting this to be taken over, and in that case, I'm hoping for several hundred of percents higher over the next months and years. So in my opinion, this has turned into a much better hodl growth case, where my plan is to simply let this play out. And they will, they will follow up on this hole. I think we're going to see more. Maybe not to the same degree. I mean, of course, they could drill a hole that's even better. We simply don't know. But this is just the start, and the big money, in my opinion, is going to be made over the next 20 news releases. Let's say 20 news releases with assay results, and perhaps even more than that. So this today is just, and yesterday is just the first step, because it's the same with Great Bear. The big money wasn't made the day after the discovery hole. The big money was made over the coming 3 years after the discovery hole. That's where you actually got the 10 to 20 bagger. You didn't get the 10 to 20 bagger after the discovery hole. I mean, yes, it was up, I don't know, 100% or whatever. But from after being up 100%, then it 10 to 20 bagged. So that's one thing. It's like one important thing, because we are very impatient, and typically what I did is like, yes, you see a big move. I mean, if you've been in this stock, for example, and you see it's up, 30-40%, you're probably, because of the poor market environment we've had, you're probably like, oh great, now I finally have a nice pop, so I think I'm gonna sell because I'm in the green. Where in reality, I mean, like immediately after the news release, when it opened up 14%, it should be up way more than 14%. So I have no problem chasing something that should be up a lot more than it is up. So I think that's one thing that I typically did in the past, where I was reluctant to buy after a discovery because I thought I had, quote, missed the boat. But we can see in case of Great Bear, for example, the big boat ride started 100% higher after the fact. The 10 to 20 bagger boat went on its way after the 100% jump immediately after the discovery hole. But that still took months and years. So if we just play around, okay, what do we expect is going to happen? There, of course, first of all, there might be even more hits. There probably is even more hits in this drill result, in this drill hole. And then they're going to be drilling around that, of course, and it's open to depth. And just to point out, I just did some quick calculations, just played around with it. This is one thing I think is a big edge, let's say, to very quickly have a sense of what something. Okay, now it seems my Excel is bugging out. Anyway, you can see here. So I just used some of the quotes in the news release here. Let's see. Furthermore, it is also notable that the nearest drill holes to this one are TUG 135 70 meters below, TUG 136 40 meters to the east, and TUG 138 60 meters to the west. So it's like, okay, let's just, and they state, indicating that there is considerable space for a substantial increase in the ultimate size of the feeder conduit. And they mentioned that all three of these holes have returned previously reported bonanza grade mineralization similar to the tenor and texture that in TUG 141. And here you have some 25 grams over 3.7, 88 over 1.5, 23 over 3 meters. So basically that's, the higher up, let's say, or in other parts, you have the individual veins, and when they drill these monsters, basically where these veins seem to come together, producing just a massive, let's say, vein swarm, concentrated gold endowment in one place. And you can see that, you can see that they kind of converge, let's say, because here you have the massive intercept. So there's a bunch of veins just going through here, and there's veins above it, and at least one vein below it as well. And I think, no, it's probably in here where here. Like they describe here, other possible feeders, because you have other vein swarms in other areas of the DYODD resource, and they seem to converge as well. Maybe this one we hit now is probably the biggest, the thickest one, let's say, but there might be more feeder zones, maybe not as impressive, but I mean, Jesus, how often are you gonna see a hole like they just drilled? But if you do some calculations, for example, it's like just going by the comments in the news release. Let's play around with the idea that this feeder zone is, quote, just 70 meters high, 105 meters in strike, and a thickness of 50 meters, basically 2/3 of the 75 meter total interval. I don't know what the true thickness is, it might actually be less, but just to have an idea, okay, volume is this many tons, let's use a specific gravity of 2.6. I don't know, that might be a bit high or a bit low, but it doesn't really matter. Let's use a average grade of 20.86 grams per ton. And again, that excludes the veins above and below. In that case, you would have, if my math is correct, you would have 641,000 ounces in this, quote, small footprint that we know of, and it's obviously open at depth. That's a lot of ounces, especially at a grade like this. I mean, in terms of quality. So if we just play around with the thoughts or idea that this will prove to be somewhat true, just from that small footprint, and we attach a value of $500 US per ounce, that's 320 million USD in net present value. Again, I don't know if that's, might be way higher or might actually be lower. I'm not sure, but just to have some kind of base case, that's 320 million US in that case. I mean, this is just my biased personal assumptions, but I'm using actual numbers, theoretical volumes from the news release. And again, okay, let's play around that it's close to this 320 million US just from a very low footprint, which is just below the current resource. So you get everything else obviously, because they didn't even know this existed prior to this. So let's play around with the idea that it's 320 million in expected value that's been added. The stock reacted again with up 14%. That might be 25 million. Even if we cut this in half by 50%, let's risk adjust that even more by 50, that's still 160 million. We could cut that a lot, and 20 to 25 million, which Mr. Market seemed, deemed fit to revalue it right off the gate, looks very, very, very low to me. Incredibly low, and that's why I've actually been, buying quite a lot. And I have no problem, again, chasing something that's gone up, because it should probably be up way more. So that's still stealing value, in my opinion. If this was a hot market environment, first of all, line 1 wouldn't start off this cheap. Second of all, it would go up way more than 14% after the trading halt. So that's why you should love sentiment bottoms like now. Extremely depressed sentiment. You can steal a lot of value. Again, imagine you're short this stock, they put out almost a miracle hole like this, and you would only be down 14% right off the bat on paper. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense at all. I mean, you have these juniors, they can swing 10% up or down on any day without news, and they put out the most impressive drill hole I think I've ever seen, and it's up 14%. I mean, that's a joke if I ever saw one. In my opinion, at least, that's a big fat joke. So I immediately started chasing. I've been pretty much buying all the time today, and I just can't sit still and keep quiet, because it's so exciting. That doesn't mean I'm all in on line 1, but I have jacked up my position considerably. Maybe it's up to, I don't know, yeah, and still only like 4 or 5% of my overall portfolio, I think. Maybe even less than that. So I would have no problem, even though I've increased my position quite a bit, but I'm more diversified than ever. So that's why every position is a lot smaller than they used to be when I was more concentrated. But I would probably be happy with, a 10-20% position in line 1. Of course, there are no guarantees, etc., and that's why I'm not all in or anything like that. But it's like the case changed substantially, and now I think this is one of the juniors I personally own that I think is at the top of the queue in terms of being acquired. I really think so, because you don't see stuff like this every day, and you know these systems can be monsters, and so does the majors, because they own such systems. I have no idea what that final price tag could be for line 1, but it very well could end up being a multi-billion-dollar system in terms of value. Again, I'm biased. Line 1 is a sponsor. I own shares. Do your own due diligence. These are just my thoughts, but I hope it helps to pointing out how I think you should think when you see something open up. You shouldn't just immediately throw up your hands and say, okay, congrats to everyone that's holding, because I thought the case became way better than and should be up way more than 14%, for example. So I've added a bunch, and right now my current strategy will pretty much be to ride this with an even bigger position after it has already revalued. I think that's still a great risk reward. We also had interesting news from Eloro Resources. Eloro is pleased to announce that Mr. Peter Marone, a shareholder of Eloro, has agreed to serve as an independent advisor to provide support and strategic advice to management on matters of project advancement and business development in relation to its Eskay project. And you can read it yourself, the CV of Peter Marone. Is executive chairman of Yamana Gold, which he founded in 2003, and which recently announced that it is to be acquired by Goldfields Limited. So this is obviously a very big gun. Executive chairman of Yamana Gold, which he founded in 2003. So you can imagine how rich this guy is, and how much he thinks about his reputation, etc. So when you see a big gun like this, and he goes on to say, I'm impressed with the size and scale of Eskay, which should be developed in time as a world-class tin silver deposit with large-scale production, etc., etc. As a shareholder, I have become impressed with the project and management. Informally, I've been consulted from time to time by management and look forward to provide strategic advice to management and the CEO, Tom Larson, and Executive VP Exploration, Dr. Bill Pearson. He's basically tying himself to the Eloro Resources ship. He's putting his name out there, disclosing that he's been a shareholder for quite some time, and I just juxtapose that to all the, in my opinion, trash talking that goes on mining Twitter. It's like calling Eskay arsenic deposit and it's low grade doo-doo, yada yada yada. It's like, I think Peter Marone knows better than people on mining Twitter, and he would not do this unless he thought this could, be a massive payday for him, etc. Because he's again tying up his name publicly, and is obviously a shareholder, and he says he's been for quite some time, and the story has just gotten better and better. And now he obviously has more time, free time, because his large company just got acquired. So this has massive signal value, in my opinion. Massive signal value that Eskay is truly legit, and he goes on to say, it's impressed with the size and scale, a world-class tin silver deposit. Does Eloro trade like it's like Peter Marone, what he says is true? No, it's valued at around 230 million. It's valued, like a run-of-the-mill gold junior, somewhat developed, would be trading at in a hot market environment. I think Eloro, akin to Line 1, of course Line 1 changed a lot, but Eloro is also one of my favorites in terms of juniors likely to be acquired. I think it's a world-class system, like Peter Marone says. I think it's stupid cheap. I have a very big position, so does a lot of family members, etc. I think some of them is actually the top position. I just think you're buying way too much for the kind of price you're seeing. Newfound Gold also, they put out some really good intercepts as per usual, starting from surface, and then 55 over 5 meters at the Keats main zone. Business as usual. They keep hitting high grade to bonanza grade gold, and it's probably some narrow intercepts in there which is even higher, and that's the main criticism of Newfound Gold. But in my opinion, I mean, they just keep on growing the footprint of all the zones, finding more and more gold. So I think that's gonna work out. And in terms of working out, signal value akin to Eloro, Newfound announces the appointment of Ron Hampton as Chief Development Officer. Chief Development Officer. Okay, yeah, is this some kind of joker, etc.? No, Ron brings 25 years of project and engineering leadership experience to the role, including extensive experience through the study, construction, and operational phases of project development. This includes, you can read all this here, but it's like big names: Centerra Gold project director for yeah, I don't know actually exactly what this mine is. Leading feasibility study and pre-execution planning for the 1.2 billion Menesa Greenfield underground gold mine in Colombia. Project director leading the ArcelorMittal, that's obviously a very big company, Baffinland iron ore project from feasibility study through construction to operation. Project execution leader for the turnaround of the 350 million ArcelorMittal Phase 1 iron ore construction project. Yada yada. Project controls and services group leader for Vale's Voisey's Bay 1 billion nickel development in Newfoundland, of all places. Project control and commercial services group leader for the 1 billion DYODD diamond mines development for Rio Tinto. Okay, obviously this is a very big gun. He has been involved with, billion-dollar projects, involved with some of the most well-known majors around in different industries as well. And here you have Colin Cattell discuss the addition, and you have Ron himself state, "I'm very excited to join the Newfound Gold team, and I'm looking forward to the challenge of accelerating the Queensway project through advanced exploration and environmental permitting and into project development phase." Does this sound? Would they add a guy like this, and would this guy tie himself to the Newfound Gold story if all the bashers were correct? I don't think so. I think this guy knows better than some mining Twitter dudes with a chip on their shoulder and an axe to grind. The Queensway project represents one of the most significant Canadian gold discoveries in a generation, and I'm honored to have been invited to participate in bringing the Queensway project toward production. So again, the signal value of both these appointments for Eloro and Newfound Gold, I don't think you should take that lightly. Because these are big guns with a reputation they obviously want to uphold, who basically come out and endorse these projects. That's not something to sneeze at. You don't get guys like this involved if they don't see that both these companies could be and should be a very big deal. So again, the signal value alone, I would take these guys' opinions over random mining Twitter bashers all day, every day. Yeah, and we've seen other news. Labrador Gold came out with drill results on their Golden Glove. I think that's the name of the target. Really good for an initial results. I think it was, I don't remember the actual results, but it was something like, what was it, like 5 grams over 8 meters or 8 grams over 5 meters, something like that. A good start. I mean, most juniors don't ever hit an intercept like that, and that's just doing a new target, a long strike, obviously, from Newfound Gold's Queensway project. We saw Eloro Resources. That's not a sponsor, but obviously they are working the Eskay Creek deposit, and they came out with news that they are had some agreement with not Aboriginals, but natives. I don't remember what they're called in Canada, but that's a big thing. I mean, stuff like that. It might seem, not important because we know everybody wants to look at high grade assay results, but if you have stuff like that, which means that yes, you can, going towards the project being able to get developed. I mean, that has huge implications for the net present values of projects. And that's what the majors keep in mind, because they are all about net present value and actual, cash flow, etc. So if you find something and there's no way that it's going to be developed, I mean, the value is zero, even though they find, the best deposit ever. So, I mean, so that's probably a very big deal. Might, should perhaps hike up the price for Eskay Mining, for example, by quite a bit. It might be more important than a new discovery. I'm not going to swear on that, but it's certainly something to keep in mind, because you might not pay attention to that, but I bet your ass that potential acquirers are looking at that. How easy, or is it feasible to actually develop something there? So if the Eskay mine is getting closer to actually being developable, let's say, that obviously really good for the entire region and Eskay Mining. Yeah, just some thoughts. Other companies had some news as well. I don't remember all news, but it's like during this sentiment bottom, this is when you steal value. You steal value because the market, Mr. Market is brain dead, absolutely refuses to price stuff the way it should be priced. And you can buy a lot of success and bank success without really taking much risk. I mean, if somebody asked me, I would actually be happy to have no Lion 1 medal, shares of Lion 1 medals. You see a news release like that, and I would be happy to immediately buy 20% higher and have a 5-10% stake position size, instead of just looking at that and saying, congrats shareholders who were already in, I don't want to chase. I mean, in my opinion, there are times to not chase and times to chase. When something should be up a lot more and it's up a bit, yes, that's a time to quote chase, because I don't see it as chasing. I just see that, the market is still extremely stupid and isn't pricing the results at fair value at all. And there's no guarantees, of course, but I mean, this drill hole might be the first of many for Line 1, which could, who knows, add 500 million in value over the next months or years, etc. So that's a big deal. So if you pay 20-25 million for that, that's a good risk reward in my book. Consider me biased always. I mean, I own shares of all companies I mentioned. I think all are sponsors as well. And do your own due diligence. This is not investing advice. Don't invest money you cannot afford to lose, etc., etc. Thanks for listening. Hit the like button if you like this content. Thanks, and see you.